All right, what do we got going on today? Got a couple of shoes here. Had these shoes for a little bit of while. Something I've wanted to do is a full A/B test between these two, the Norda 005 and the Kjerag 02 from NNormal. They're kind of similar shoes. I've gotten questions about this comparison and want to do it myself. They kind of feel in the similar range. I am going to make this a fair fight today. Well, in a certain way. I took the insoles out of these 005s. I have been running this shoe right here without insoles for a few runs now. Not that I'm putting a ton of miles in them with all the testing that I'm doing, but I got the idea since I have two pairs of these, if you've watched my other reviews, and this being the smaller US 10 here, it's a little bit cramped. Nordas tend to run a little bit short across the board as a brand. So I have a US 10 here, EU 43 and a third in the 005. And this one, Kjerag 02, is a US 9.5 here, also listed at the same EU 43 and a third. Even at that same EU sizing here, I find the US sizing, of course, a little bit more accurate. I consider my US 9.5 to be true to size, and 9.5 here is not quite a full thumb's width, but more than a half. So I feel like this is accurate. At a 10 here, it's just a little bit shorter in the 005, and that is the case for all of Norda's. They tend to run a little bit short and a little bit wide and a little bit more volume. So I know some kind of fit and volume differences based on, not running them A/B, but my testing and running in these shoes all this time. And so I have this one also in a 10.5, which fits much better, much more accurately lengthwise, even though the US sizing is quite off, but I get more volume in that one. So Kjerag. So the Kjerag 02 here, of course, has no insole in there. You've got this kind of strobel type setup here, but it's like a felty material in there. Probably well familiar with this, similar to the 001. Same, in fact, or similar material. It has a little bit of it's like a felt. It has a little bit of like grip on the foot underneath it, similar or at least on the same level as a traditional insole. So with that sizing discrepancy with Norda across the board running a little short, I've been running this shoe actually. I tested it once and I kind of liked it, so I've done it a few times now. I took the insole out of here. Norda has a super critical insole. I believe this is the same TPEE, could be just regular TPE. It's a super critical insole here. They have a race day insole and this insole right here, which has more shape around it. I double them up in my larger US 10.5 005. In this one, I've just been running the single insole here, and now I'm taking out entirely. So not just for the purposes of this comparison test, I've just been doing that across the board, and it does give me a little bit more volume. I find that the US 10 here without the insole, it's going to put it a little bit closer actually in stack to the 002, to the 02, sorry. This may be foreshadowing, I may get mixed up a lot. 002 is a shoe from Norda, of course. This is the Kjerag 02. Without that insole there, you're gonna lose about, again, it's pretty thin, a couple millimeters here, but it'll bring it more in line with this one and give it also a similar feel without having it in there. But this one does not have the felty strobel board in here. This is more of like a fabricy. It's kind of smooth in here. I actually like it. It's pretty comfortable, but perhaps not the grip underneath the sock as you get, out of the box with the Kjerag 02. We'll see on the run, but Kjerag 02 versus 005, both insole-less. The 02 here by design. If you watched my last video, initial test run of the Hoka Zinal 3, I mentioned these three shoes as having the exact same weight. I measured these three shoes at 8.5 ounces, all of them. Probably be a tad lower now without the insole in the 005, but I had them in a similar range. I'm not going to go A, B, C today. I'm only going to go A, B, primarily because I don't have enough miles in this one to get a good handle on them yet. And I do have the initial impression that they are slightly different kind of shoes. I was flexing them earlier just to demonstrate. This is the 005. It's a pretty flexible shoe for what you get, the range you get out of the shoe specifically, also the stack, but flex primarily oriented around the front of the shoe. You do have more tension. It's, you know, there's no plate here. There is still some twist to it, but there's more tension around here, and that works better for longer distances, more protective, gives you a more stable feel on the run. Just refreshing myself on this O2 because I haven't run in this shoe in a while, and it is actually quite similar. It's less flexy, in fact, than the 005, but similarly, pretty much smooth, kind of flex-oriented under the forefoot going into that toe off, but less so around the middle of the shoe. Now, this shoe is extremely narrow, so you have some twist to it, but again, given the narrowness, that's going to allow you to be pretty agile no matter what amount of flex you have under the middle of the shoe. But similar to the 005, you can see the profile there really up front. Go back to this one here. A little bit easier flex here with the 005, in fact, and of course, wider base. If I look at the Zinal 3 here, it's way more flexible all around. You have similar, it's easier flex up front of the forefoot, and then both of those shoes and also in the middle of the shoe is completely flexible, so very easy to flex anywhere. Even I did that in my previous video, kind of like you can get a reverse flex even. So very soft, very contoury over anything underfoot, any shape, size, whatever. So I don't quite feel, even though it's similar weight, similar stack range, I don't feel like it's the same type of shoe as these two. We'll see when I test this more, but for now I'm gonna go out in these two. Stay tuned to the end. I will do a wet test, but I'm gonna save it towards the end of this video. I actually wanted to check out the water level before I run around this way, hit the water on the way back, and then spend some time seeing how long it takes for them to drain and dry out. Very close in the underfoot feel and sensation here right out of the gate, especially without the insole here in the 005. The direct feel underneath my foot, underneath my sock, very similar in my right shoe with the 005 compared to the Kjerag 02 in the left. Insoles can make a huge difference, especially when you start getting to those thicker ones, especially Ortholite, of course, can really, you know, enhance the feel of softness, even though it doesn't really change the shoe itself. The Norda insole, as you saw, still very thin, doesn't make a huge difference, but I'd say it is kind of noticeable here. Certainly doing the trick of giving me that touch extra space that I would want, certainly in the US 10, and even putting it on par with this Kjerag 02 in 9.5. I'm getting that direct, or at least more direct feeling ground feel under the Norda now, similar to the 02 Kjerag. Of course, running without insoles, although there's not many shoes on the market specifically designed without insoles, but another type of shoe is a strobe-less design. Without a strobe board, still with an insole, you get a similar kind of more direct feel, often more direct soft feel when you go without a strobe board. I'm thinking about shoes such as the Cloud Ultra Pro and of course the Prodigio Pro from La Sportiva. Those shoes have kind of a attachment ring of fabric around the outside, but in the middle of the shoe under the center of the foot, no strobe there. And those are softer foams, not necessarily softer compared to the 005, but they're kind of like higher stack feeling shoes at least. And I feel like I noticed them feeling softer underfoot, certainly compared to the normal shoe here. I'm also noticing the difference in width between these two shoes. Kjerag 02, of course, runs on the narrower side, but I find that to be the case more around the middle of the shoe. I find the forefoot actually quite nice. Not quite as spacious as 01, but adequate enough, especially now that they went with a single layer upper here. I don't feel any squeezing at all. Although, compared to the 005 here, it does seem to wrap around my forefoot a little bit closer. So that could be a concern if you're looking at these two shoes and you had a wider or higher volume foot. The Norda is certainly wider across the forefoot, more space for foot volume overall, and especially forefoot volume. I could also feel the difference here with my forefoot kind of spreading out a little bit more in the 005. Again, I've got no insole here, but I also don't have a high volume foot, so that's probably evening the feel out for me compared to a lot of runners out there. I just get the sense my left foot, Kjerag 02, it's like my forefoot is more confined, not in a bad way, but confined from expanding out on impact. It's more of like a precise ball of foot feel on the ground, where this 005 now, a little bit more width. I hit the ground, feel like my forefoot has a little bit more room, not necessarily for toe splay, perhaps if you have a narrow foot, but just feel like the ball of my foot can kind of spread out a little more on impact. Nah, not yet. With both shoes coming in at the exact same weight, similar or same flex profiles as you saw in the intro there, when you're climbing, the feel is quite similar. I don't feel like I'm obviously in this A/B test picking up one shoe which is heavier than the other, perhaps giving me a biased feel. They're exactly the same again, but that flex also being similar. Very close feel in terms of climbing. Ground feel, easy flex around the forefoot, no problems at all. And you know, compared to some heavier weight shoes, going up a hill in an 8.5 ounce shoe is noticeably different. By the way, these shoes also both feel great running in smoother single track, any kind of California carpet type situation. They feel fantastic. The super lightweight is always great. There's just enough protection where they don't feel like, again, this is very smooth, don't feel like you're bottoming out through the foam. So I'm not talking about rocks and technicality here. Even on smoother stuff, you feel like you're getting enough cush underfoot, even though they're not really high max stack shoes here. Definitely more in that mid-range. Quick run through on specs here. Again, same exact weight. I measure 8.5 ounces, 240 grams in my EU 43 1/3, which is again US 10 in Norda, but US 9.5 in the normal. The normal shoe is listed at a lower spec stack height, 2620 for a 6 mil drop, whereas the 005 is listed at 28.5, 21.5 for a 7 mil drop. Actual measurements, I get 27.21 for the 02 and 34.27 for the 005. So that is a significant difference in terms of stack height. 7 at the heel, 6 up front, although again, without an insole here, it's probably more like 4 to 5 mil difference underfoot, but I honestly, it does not feel that way at all. They feel closer than those numbers would seem to indicate. So the 005 is higher underfoot at the exact same weight with a definitively wider platform on the ground. What gives? As with all things Norda 005, it's all about that Arnatel TPEE midsole. Complete game-changing foam here. That's what allows them to pack that stack height in, add that ground platform for stability, and match the lower weight of much what you would traditionally think of as lighter weight shoes. Gonna head up that way, but take a upper look first. But before I do that, take a look down in the description. I have a lot of test runs, not so much with the normal shoe. I do have a couple there, but more reviews, including the 005, very popular shoe. Get tons of questions about comparisons and all that kind of stuff. So there are related links down in the description, related videos and comparisons that I've done. So I don't want to dig too much in details throughout the course of this one, because you can catch a lot of those in those other videos. So just focus on the differences relatively between these two here. First thing to note, as I'm standing here for just a couple minutes, Whoever tells you that material color does not make a difference in temperature is completely wrong. My left foot, in just a couple minutes of standing here, I notice it being definitely warmer on top of the foot. And as I actually touch this shoe definitely feels warmer. So they do have lighter colors in this one, but I know people think that's nonsense, but it is absolutely not. This shoe out in hot exposed conditions like I am here, most of the time in Boise and a lot of racing, is definitely going to feel warmer. If you're in the forest and in the shade, okay, I could see you don't want to have a white shoe, although they will get muddy and dirty in a forest situation, but the white is going to reflect temperature. Anyway, again, difference in sizing here. Half US size difference here, and this one is actually shorter up front. I am like, a half thumbs width here, maybe even less, with no insole in this US 10. Nordas do run short. You have to go a half size up minimum. I'm on my larger end of my typical US 9.5, US 10. I run most of my ultras, most of my trail runs in US 10, and I would not want to do it. I did a 20-mile race in this exact shoe, and that was kind of pushing it. I would definitely not want to run long haired, so that would put me at a full size up to get probably equal sizing. I do have that full size up at home, and that's equal size to this one, but again, the volume is much different. So looking at these here, I don't find an issue with the volume of the normal shoe at the forefoot. 01 does seem wider. It just seems flatter underfoot. You're 2 mil less in stack in the Kjerag 01. Perhaps that has something to do with it, but it just feels like kind of wide, kind of minimal, almost like an ultra style forefoot there, aside from the front of the toe box in the 01. Different here, you have kind of a little taper here, but I don't find this obtrusive at all. I have no issues at all with the upper toe box, front of the toes in this shoe. For this style of shoe, again, I'm not pegging this for me as a long distance ultra racing shoe. I definitely have a half thumbs here, and that's just fine given that the fit is so locked in and the shoe is just so, slim profile, so narrow. I want to have that kind of closer feel, although I'm not banging up against the front here in any way, even on descents. That's not the case here. It's wider here, so I don't have any issues on the pinky side or the big toe side, but the front is an issue in this sizing here. You can probably see the difference here. It is wider here, and the difference is primarily in the middle of the shoe, but also a little bit at the forefoot here in the 005. And when I hit the ground here like this, you can almost probably see it. My ball of the foot, like this corresponding, just seems to spread out a little bit more so than this. Even though it's comfortable enough, I don't lace this too tight here, so I want to keep that kind of ground feel. I want to keep as much of that kind of impact absorption in my foot as possible in the 02 when I'm running, but it just seems a little more contained with the width here, whereas this one's wide, and probably the midfoot contributes to that too. It's just kind of high volume through here. Not too bad in this one, but again, if I'm properly sized in terms of length, this is coming closer together in my other sizing, and it just seems looser in terms of volume in that correct lengthwise sizing. So I wear thicker socks and double up the insoles in that 10.5, whereas no insole here, thinner socks here, and I still notice the difference in the midsole volume here, midfoot volume here. Midfoot volume here, notably slim. Of course, underfoot is narrower, one of the most extreme narrow platforms on the ground, similar to Kilian's previous Salomon shoes, but you're also kind of overhanging over here. There's a little bit of a sidewall on the inside here that you don't necessarily have with the Norda. Again, I think that's just, there's more comfort in this upper in terms of width and volume. Certainly if you have a wider foot, this is going to be more comfortable for you. Narrower foot runners are going to love this shoe, love the precise fit and feel of it, but wider foot runners, and certainly if you have problems around the midfoot, I don't have a high volume shoe, but I think it's by design hanging over. Nobody's foot is this narrow, right? So you're going to overhang a little bit here. This sidewall does a little bit to kind of keep you on top of the platform, and it's just perfect for me. But again, if you have that wider foot, it's going to be probably a squeeze around this area. Heading back up here, there's a nice little descent on the other side of this hill here. Talked about that Arnatel TPEE, the lightweight, the higher stack what you gain from that. The platform, that is most noticeable for the 005 compared to the Kjerag 02 at the midfoot and under the heel. I could definitely feel a more square and stable landing platform in the 005. More forgiving, I would say, for most runners because it's wide. It's also soft, so it contours a bit. You can pretty much land anywhere you need to underfoot with the 005 here, whereas the 02, it's narrower under that midfoot. Have to be careful. I'm going to see that here when I come back down this descent on the other side. I want to be more up on the forefoot in the normal shoe. You really want to be careful of landing on anything uneven around the middle of the 02 because it's just so narrow. You may miss what you're trying to land on, or it may just be too narrow and tip over. So it naturally kind of entices you or leads you into having more of that forward lean, more of that midfoot, forefoot type of agile running style, ground strike pattern, even going downhill. Also coming back to the weight, given that this shoe is the same weight, despite being lower and narrower, the feel of the foam is definitely denser underfoot. It is a TPE here, notable upgrade from supercritical EVA in version 1. Definitely more energetic, and the 2 mil makes a big difference. The extra 2 mil plus the fact that it doesn't seem to bottom out as the 01 does makes a huge difference here. But compared to the 005, it does feel a little bit denser, so a little firmer feel on the ground, but still energetic again. You can see I'm running a bit smoother on the descents here. Legs are feeling a little bit better, able to open it up just a tad, but still being a little bit careful coming back from my injury here. The 005 wider platform, just talking about under the middle of the shoe and the heel, definitely gives you more room to crash down on when you're heading downhill. Feels more stable for sure when I'm landing. I'm still landing a little bit on my heel here with the Kjerag 02, but definitely feel like I have to be careful with it. I can sense the narrowness under the heel and that I do not want to land on something uneven and lose my balance here for sure. 005 gives you definitely more wiggle room. I feel like I could just drop my foot more easily wherever and not think about it as much. You kind of want to pick your way a little bit more through stuff, descending, and of course rocky technical terrain with the Kjerag 02. Both shoes not large on protection, 27 under the forefoot with the 005. Again, a little bit less with the 02. So without any rock plate or anything, you do have to be careful. Your feet have to be up for the task. One of the reasons why I have not run the 005 specifically in a longer ultra, I just don't feel like I have that kind of foot strength or the ability to withstand a lot of the rocks and stuff that you're not seeing right here, but definitely the case at the races I run here in Idaho and around here. Definitely need some beefed up protection, and all the more reason to look forward to the 055. The 02 here is of course more of a staple on the short to mid-distance racing scene. El Hussein out at Golden Trail World Series dominating in this shoe, so that's kind of where I see the shoe, even for me. Not running like El Hussein obviously, but those type of distances, shorter, more agile running. You want that lightweight shoe, you want that slimmer profile, I'm sure, in a lot of those Golden Trail courses, and the protection is less of a consideration without having to go, say, 100 miles, 100K, 50 miles even. This section of trail here, super fun. It's not too long, but these types of shoes are so fun to run in this kind of twisty, turny, movement-oriented trails. All right, here we go, wet test. Let's see. Not too deep, actually. If you'll recall, I did a full wet test with the 005 compared to the Prodigio Pro, and I got quite surprising results. On the run, it felt like the 005 was holding more water, but I think I actually weighed them in that test, and it ended up being not too much, and they seem to dry out pretty quick. I felt like maybe the water was swishing around inside the shoe for a little bit longer or underneath the foot, but the upper material itself didn't really hold it that much. So once it kind of got out of my socks or like squished its way out of my socks, then it was in fact lighter. So we'll see how this normal shoe, I can't remember if I got it probably a little bit wet, but not too much. Let me get in there. Ow, thorns. Snack break while I'm paused here. Got both of my feet submerged here. In fact, something new from Goo, Liquid Energy, Passion Fruit Orange Guava. They sent me a few of these to try out. I have tried this Liquid Energy before. It's quite interesting. It's a liquid, 25 grams of carbs, 24 actually, but it's kind of a flat package here. It feels very light and obviously different than gels. If you're getting fatigued with the texture or slurping down a sticky gel, sometimes it could just be hard to get it down without a lot of fluids, or perhaps if you're running low on fluids in a race, this could be something to kind of tuck away as your kind of extra fuel or your go-to fuel, in fact. This is a new flavor, Passion Fruit Orange Guava. It just kind of, I'm gonna waste a little here. It's a sugary, liquidy, it's not like complete watery, but definitely closer to a water than a gel. So it's very interesting. I'm not aware if there, I think Enervit has something like this, but it could be something to consider if you don't like the texture of gel, you don't like the stickiness of it, or you could possibly be in the scenario where you don't need as much fluids, but you still need the carbs for energy. When you have those sticky gels, it kind of, you need to take more fluids with it, but maybe you don't want it or don't need it. Something like this Liquid Energy. They have a lemon flavor. They have some other ones that I have tried, which have been good. I think they do have some with caffeine. So if caffeine gels, that's another thing. Those can have that funny, weird caffeine taste, like metallic-y almost. If you want to get that caffeine in, you grab one of these. It might be easier to kind of get it down in liquid form as to having to like kind of suck down that gel. It's a good flavor too. Orange, Passion Fruit Orange Guava. Goo Energy. All right, let's go. So I'm gonna put a lap timer on this. Let's say we'll run for 15-20 minutes or so, and then give a report back on the drainability, breathability, water absorption. Underfoot contour, another aspect everyone's always interested in. 005, definitely very neutral, one of the most neutral out there. It's definitely a combination where you have that wide platform, wide volume fit, and also your arch is not really pressed up into by any interior contouring. Pretty neutral underfoot, but still supportive. Again, with the wider platform under the middle and also under the heel, I don't find a lot of, or any, collapsing in fact. So the absence of any kind of noticeable arch contouring doesn't seem to be an issue at all for me. They feel very comfortable. Kjerag 2, on the other hand, does have a little bit of a bump up under the arch. I don't think it's excessive, and part of it is probably attributable to more like the sidewall than the actual contour under the foot, but it is kind of in the same area. So I do notice a little bit of that kind of feeling under the foot, but again, I don't think it's too prominent. Again, I also showed the narrowness of the upper, the shoe overall around the middle. So it's just that area in general where you're kind of overhanging a little or a lot, depending on your foot width and volume, plus the sidewall, plus a little contour underneath. One last little fun trail segment here as I run through this area, as I often do. Often talk about Foothold and security. It's great in both of these shoes. I think it's fair to say that a little bit more dialed fit with the Kjerag 02, despite the fact that it's a little bit longer, again in a smaller US size. But especially now that they're both still wet, got about 7 or 8 minutes so far since the stream, and Norda seems to kind of loosen up a little with the water. I notice it being slightly looser. Might have to tighten that down if I make another stop. The 02 feels just as dialed all around the foot, everywhere around the upper. So even when wet here, Kjerag 02 of course has a matrix upper, which I love, and Norda 005 has that Dyneema upper, which I have come to love. Both extremely durable, lightweight. Breathability edge does go to the normal though. Bit of a tighter weave with that Dyneema in the 005. Perhaps that's what keeps the water in a little bit longer, maybe that I found in my Grigio Pro comparison wet test, but it does also seem to dry out very quickly. The material itself, that is. There's also a larger knit gusset on both sides of the foot in the Kjerag 02, and I think that is one element that will hold some water for a longer amount of time. It's been on 13 minutes here since submersion, so should make a couple more minutes to the end of this trail and then kind of filled out a little. Just about 16 minutes here since dunking both shoes. I have to say both feet are still wet, of course. The socks are wet. It hasn't been that long, but it feels wetter inside the 02. Like my foot feels a little bit wetter all around, and it possibly, I think it is those gussets, because I feel like I notice it on the sides of the foot where those are located. The 005 feels, you know, the sock is damp, of course, but I don't feel any water inside at all, and the upper material does seem to dry out pretty quickly. Again, this is a matrix upper here, so this is not going to hold water, but the knit interior, and also I think this padding inside the collar, the tongue, by the way, is also a knit material here. This is like a kind of, I don't know what it is, felty thing. It does hold a little bit, but it feels like this is wetter. Just pop it off real quick. Laces had a little water to them. See, I think this material all around here seems to be a little bit more absorptive, and the gusset, it's all integrated with the tongue. It's a knit material, and that's quite large. So I think the combination, all of this kind of interior purple stuff going on top of the foot and all along the sides here, that's what seems to be feeling a little bit wet, or at least it's keeping it, this kind of overlapping is keeping it in my sock. Check inside the 005 here. This is not knit, but this also does seem to hold water. It's kind of like a suede-y type material, similar on these webs here, but they are smaller. It's not like a, there's also a fabric here, but it's a lighter material. You could see through it here compared to that knit in the Kjerag 02. Just overall inside, it's not a lined upper here. You can see my fingers through there here. And it's just, there seems to be less stuff holding onto water in here. And of course I don't have the insole in here too, which this one doesn't have by default. So yeah, I think the 005 gets the edge in the wet test here. It did seem to loosen up though with the water, so this is giving me a chance to kind of tighten them down a little bit more. Also, you saw with my Sidus socks here, I was concerned about not having insole in here that it would be slipping around when I initially tried this out, but it does seem to, I don't know, the texture seems a little bit crosswise, and I don't notice any slipping. Again, I've got these Sidus socks. They have this gripper band. This is the Trail Ultra model, I think. Trail Protect model, actually. But they've got this gripper band, so in the absence of any insole texture, again, this non-insole in this shoe does have a little bit more texture under the foot, but for the 005, in the absence of any insole texture, I don't know, perhaps the footboard is not as slippery as I thought it would be, and the socks also certainly help. Both shoes have Vibram Mega Grip underfoot. You've got 4mm lugs with the 005, 3.5 with the Kjerag 2. You do have Mega Grip Elite with the 005, which is a stickier, lighter compound apparently. I believe the 005 was the first shoe to have that Elite compound. You see it now also in the Cascadia Elite. Maybe a few others that I'm not sure about. Neither of these outsoles is going to give you extreme traction levels in very rugged or muddy conditions. Talked about the lugs on the 005 being quite widely spaced. Maybe perhaps easy wearing, although my pair has been pretty good so far. The 1/2 mil shorter lugs in the Kjerag 2 got that kind of flattish shape to them, so not a ton of bite from the edges of those lugs. Designed more like a kind of versatile all-terrain shoe. Of course, you see this shoe out at Zagama, so that looked like a mud fest this year. But overall, can't really give an edge to either shoe. You'll have in varied terrain similar levels of grip and traction here, really no issues. Flex and contour also plays a big role in grip and traction, or at least perceived grip and traction. And both of these shoes, as you saw in the intro, have that good flex, have that good contour. So you'll get some extra grab from that on top of the Vibram Mega Grip or Mega Grip Elite itself. Final thoughts here. Probably well familiar with these shoes at this point, so I guess I'll give my personal feelings on them. The 005 in this iteration feels to me like squarely a short to mid-distance racer, and has the lightweight to run fast for shorter distances. Not a propulsive plate as you might look to in some kind of more runnable races, but lightweight again, comfort feel, and just a dynamic energy underfoot with that Arnatel TPE. Certainly a little bit higher stack than the Kjerag 2. 3427 by my measurements is plenty for, say, 50 miles even. For me, I was questionable last season on going up to 100K in them. I ended up going with the Cloud Ultra Pro, but the 055 is on the horizon, and that will bit of added protection that I feel that I personally need, especially under the forefoot. The 055 should resolve those kind of issues. The Kjerag 2, on the other hand, for me, again, personally, definitely leans shorter distance, kind of short to mid distance, everyday running and training. Super fun shoe for that. But just because Killian is running this shoe out at Hard Rock, Western States, doesn't mean it's an option for you, or I'm sure most runners, including myself. 27, 21 is just not a lot underfoot. You want to be hopping around in this shoe, dipping and diving. Again, fun training shoe, really awesome everyday shoe. But that 21 under the forefoot, especially for me, that is going to wear even when you get into those mid-distance ultras. So personally, probably cap these at 50K for me, but even then, kind of depend on the course. I don't know, I'd have to really think about it. Maybe a foresty, kind of agile, not necessarily rocky type of course, and then I would like this shoe. But if it were more runnable, I might want to go with something little bit quicker, a little bit more propulsive with a plate or something like that. But that also comes down to personal preference. Price is of course a factor. $215 on the normal shoe, hefty $325 for the 005. The good thing is both of these shoes have that reputation of being extremely long lasting. These are high quality, well built shoes, highly durable in terms of the upper, midsole, even the outsole. I think the 005 for me has not been wearing out as quick as some others have found. Depends again on your terrain, but you should get good mileage out of these. And even if you wear down the 005, you could use it on the road or the treadmill. Maybe not the treadmill with the soft rubber, but the road and lighter trails once the outsole kind of wears out. But definitely pricier if you were thinking that you were only looking at shorter distances, maybe not those longer mid to long ultra type distances. You might want to save the money and go with the normal. But if you were thinking about going every distance from short, mid to long, say 100 miles, 100K, 100 miles and beyond, then 005 would pretty much cover more of that than you would cover in the Kjerag 02. I am happy to have both of these models, if not for racing, just running day to day. 8.5 ounces, you just don't find that in a lot of trail shoes, as stack heights naturally are just going up and up and up. People want more cushion, and I feel like both of these models have enough of it. Again, going back to that Zinal 3 and why I didn't do an ABC today, that one, I think it is 30-25, but it feels thinner. The softness of it feels softer, feels more flexible, and I don't think it quite has as much protection, maybe even at similar stack heights as these shoes do. So that had really fun running that Zinal 3, but perhaps that would lean even shorter, or just like stick to day-to-day running in those, or perhaps even vertical races due to the lightness and the flexibility of it. Doesn't have the day-to-day comfort, I would say, as both of these models do. These are both models that if you like a lightweight feel in your everyday running, these two will certainly do the job for you. Thank you for tuning in once again. Please like and subscribe. Check out the website, www.humblerunning.com. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what A/B tests you would like to see, reviews, comparisons, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to hear from you no matter what. Check out my Trail Gators review and my Pursuit 3 run with the Trado Trail Gators in these submersions back here. I did get some pebbles in my shoe, so that is another scenario where you want to have Gators. Those tend to dry out pretty quickly anyway. It's more material to grab more water, but it will keep those pebbles out if you are running through those kind of like small stream crossings. Anyway, leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching again. I'll see you next time out on the trails.